Before we get going into your Hockey IQ podcast episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot is the smart shooting lane. It's like a batting cage for hockey players. Very cool. Tracks your shot in three ways: accuracy, shot speed, and reaction time. Easy to use. Actually, I used it when I played and was growing up. Very easy. Simply scan your phone in, select your settings, and start shooting. You can see your stats on the app and online. You can check them out at rapidshot.com. Great small business. I actually grew up with one of the owner's sons and have played with all the family members by now, just in local pickups here in Ohio. Very cool local business. Awesome product. I love it. I know quite a few NHLers have them in their homes. A lot of D1 programs have it at their rinks. So you have to check this out. Rapidshot.com. Check it out. Rapid Shot, thank you so much for sponsoring our podcast. On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on the biggest masshole out there, Smaht Scouting, founder and CEO, and president and scout and everything else, Josh Tessler. Welcome, Josh.
And Greg, again, thank you so much for having me on, buddy. And I am a masshole and
proud of it.
Yeah, and I'm damn proud of it.
Well, hey, Northeastern future grad. Any other massholes accolades you'd like to add to that? I see a Red Sox pennant in the background, so filling them up.
Yep, and and the Mets have actually became my NL adopted team. So unfortunately I was traveling last night and I missed game 3, but I guess it's a good thing that I missed game 3 because as soon as I got off the plane, I looked at the score and I was just like, oh man, I'm wearing a Mets hat in the airport and I really hope no one says anything to me because I wasn't like I was just like, it's 10:30 at night. I want to get home. Like, I don't want to talk to people about the game. Like, no. So I was in like tunnel vision mode. Like, gotta get to the Uber. Get in the Uber, get home, eat something because I had no time for food.
Well, my man, fortunately, we're not talking baseball and your poor taste in sports teams. We're talking hockey tonight. Couldn't be more excited. So you've been a long time scout here. You've sometimes gone against the grain, but I feel like Smaht Scouting has got to be one of the go-to resources, especially for those that don't want to pay an arm and a leg to get good quality content out there. And whenever I'm drafting my fantasy team and I got to look at the New Year's recruits, because I don't have time for that, you pop right up. And every time I'm like, I'd rather do this scouting report than others. So I'm curious to see why you started in the first place, because it's a lot of work. And secondly, from that, how have you decided to put together a team? Because good help is hard to find.
Yeah. So in terms of starting Smaht Scouting, so early on during the pandemic, I decided to go and pursue a MBA. So I applied and got into Northeastern, but at the same time, I was doing prospect work for future considerations and Dauber prospects. And I still wanted to continue doing prospecting, but at the same point, I didn't want deadlines hanging over me. And so I thought, if I started my own thing, I absolutely wouldn't have that, I wouldn't have that problem at all because I would be, I would be in control, of my work schedule. And so I started to roll out content. And then I had one buddy hit me up. So I had Alex Appleyard. So he hit me up way back when. And Alex, and Alex was, he very, very much wants to do prospecting, and wanted to write regular reports, and yeah, and so he joined the team, and he was basically like the de facto European guy. So he's, and yeah, so he was the first guy that I brought on. Then I brought on Stephen Ellis, and so, and after, and after we had, a few guys, I wanted to just, I wanted to add more and more and more, so that way we had, more coverage, and so now we have a bunch of crossover scouts because I love having crossover guys, and I think one, and I think people, tend to, forget the value of what a crossover scout means, because oftentimes you have a scout that's, focused on like one particular league or one particular region, and they don't really get a handle on, who is in the other region, so that way I can compare, these guys in my region to, to guys in that region. And so I like the value of, of having a scout that, is in multiple, is in multiple camps, so to speak. And I definitely think that that brings value, and at the same point, like, I love goaltender scouts. And I, and while I didn't, while actually I haven't brought one on, and I feel like people are a little scared about, being a goaltender scout, because I feel like goaltending, like, to really scout it is like, I mean, like, in terms of public, I'm sorry, like, in terms of public work, it's very, very, very niche. Like, people do it, but they don't, like, every report reads, reads the same. Like, there's nothing that really, like, separates, out, goalie A versus goalie B. And so at the same point, like, I understand people are, a little bit, worried, and think goalies are voodoo, but they aren't. And so what I want to do is, I didn't want to bring on someone to be the goaltender scout. I kind of wanted to be the goaltender scout. So even though I don't focus on goaltending exclusively, I wanted a firm, grasp in terms of, what, what goaltenders, met the standard for me, in terms of, goaltenders that I was confident in, to be, to be a capable NHL goaltender. And so I look at guys like, Benjamin Goudreau, from the 2021 draft, where I feel like people, you know, um, I feel like people undervalued him. Like, he didn't have an OHL season, and so, that definitely hurt him. But, in terms of his U18 play that year, man, it popped. Like, he was a beast, and I mean, he was a beast in that. And, and I love, the glove work, the speed. He's capable of making 10 bell saves. Like, he's got wicked good athleticism.
So
And
question for you here. So when you're talking about good glove work, what are you looking for?
so, yeah, so generally speaking, um, so if a goaltender saves, I'm sorry, if a goaltender can get a lot of, like, medium and high danger glove saves, great. Low danger, I don't really care that much about. It's because with low danger, unless the goaltender's got a lot of traffic out in front of him, I expect the goaltender to make the glove save, if they're tracking the puck. So, and if they're not, then that's a red flag. Because a goaltender should not be giving up, a ton of, a ton of low danger chances. So I don't so if a goaltender is giving up a lot of them, well, that's certainly a red flag for me. And you know, but yeah, so but the things that I value are speed and rebound control. Um, and for me, um, I just felt like when people looked at goaltenders, like people often talk about rebound control, but there were very, very few people that actually tracked it. So I started to do it, and then I realized that Cole Anderson was hired by the Philadelphia Flyers. He like I like I called him the godfather of rebound control data, because when he was doing public work, he put out data, and he put visuals. I can't remember if it was Tableau or not, but yeah, like but he was the godfather. And I remember he did it on the NHL side as well, so he wasn't just NHL draft focused. But then but like but I saw that as, oh, it's an area for me to go take on, because at that point nobody else is doing it. And so I began doing it 2 years ago. And I enjoy it quite a bit. Of course, for me, when I look at the last 2 years, in terms of like the goaltender talent, there are more goaltenders where, I feel like there's a solid chance of, them having a solid NHL career, in the 2021 draft versus the 2022. You're, so, because like you look at, because you look at Jesper Wallstedt, you look at Sebastian Kosa and Benjamin Gaudreau, and I definitely feel like those guys are very, very much, NHL capable, and potentially NHL star worthy. Because what Jesper Wallstedt has been able, has been able to do, throughout, his youth career. Like, he did extremely well in that, when he was playing in the SHL during his draft year. Like, just a fantastic goaltender. Like his data was off the charts. And last year, in terms of the goaltenders, none of them really said NHL star to me, but they were all more like, there's an NHL capable guy, and there were definitely plenty. And for teams, it was who is your who is your favorite goaltender that you see being NHL capable, and what are the chances that they're going to make it. And then at that point, you sit back and you think, well, if there's a better shot of them making that, based on their mechanics, then they're going to go slightly higher. But like the goaltenders that I really, really liked, those were Maxim Mayrov. He was taken by the Dallas Stars. Ty Young, he was taken by I think he was taken by Vancouver. I'm pretty sure he was taken by Vancouver. With Ty Young was, so he kind of did like a half and a half, because he was doing a half BCAHL, half WHL season last year. And it's because he belonged to, his WHL rights are owned by Prince George. And so pretty sure Prince George had a combo of Taylor Gauthier and Tyler Brennan last year. And what happened was, well, Ty Young doesn't really have a role then, because, you basically have like those I'm sorry, yeah, because you basically have like those guys like like locked up as your as your number one and number two, and so you don't really need to carry three goalies, unless someone gets hurt. So at that point, your third guy ends up going to go, grab minutes wherever he can. So at that point, he goes to the BCHL. So I tracked his BCHL and his the WHL games and loved him. And I was just like, no one's talking about him, but he's a guy that I feel like he,
So when you're tracking here, what are you tracking? I'm guessing that would be a good starting point to understand
sure,
and fill our listeners here with an idea of, okay, I'm watching, but what am I looking for? What do I find valuable enough to track?
yeah, sure. So I mainly track speed and rebound control. And so in terms of speed, I do up down time and side to side time. Um, so um, so I mean, I'm mainly looking for the speedier goaltenders, that you know um that can make those 10 bell saves, that can that can react well to puck movement, and so that's why I value those speedy goaltenders. And then when you look at the rebound control, um it really comes down to this. When goaltenders are facing shots from low danger, are they controlling are they controlling the rebounds and pushing them to low danger, or are those pucks ending up in high danger or medium danger areas? And if they're ending up in high and medium danger areas, more often than not, that's not a good thing. So you know, so so you definitely want to see a significantly higher low danger rebound control rate, versus a medium and high. So those are like the main two things that I track. Um glove saves too. Um and I'm constantly looking to add more and more to it. But those are the things that I have tracked over the last 2 years.
Fascinating. And did you start tracking beforehand, or like what pushed you to track? And were you like, I'm sick and I can't find what I'm looking for, and that's where you started tracking, or how did that come about?
I just, I mean, at points like I was about to write a goaltender report, and there was not a lot of data out there, and unfortunately, goals against average and save percentage, well, they tell you very, very little about the goaltender. I mean, like, obviously, obviously you want a higher, save percentage and a lower goals against average, but but in certain situations, just because a goaltender, has like a 2.62 goals against average, well, that doesn't mean he's bad. So like, it's, so I got to the point where I was just like, there's no data out there. And like, and like, I started to see like more and more data around like expected goals, but, but, again, that doesn't tell me a lot. So like, I really, really want to get into the more granular data, and really dissect the goaltender. Initially I just thought, hey, speed and rebound control, those make sense to me. And so that's what I went with.
Athleticism is great. Speed is better.
Yep.
So so goaltending seems to be where you started cutting your teeth, but obviously you've moved beyond that, and you started to look at players. So what are you looking for when you're watching a player? Like what sticks out to you?
Yeah, so I mean, like, there's a lot of things that really stick out to me. But I mean, I'm mainly looking for players that can really develop high danger chances, and in and have great puck manipulation, or and or use whatever space is given to them. So, I love it when players are looking to, complete passes underneath the triangle, and to use whatever space is given to them. And so one of the guys that I loved, that I loved last year was Adam Sikora, who the New York Rangers took. And when he was limited on space, he used whatever he had, and I loved it. That's like I love those qualities. And defensively, of course, qualities like gap control, how assertive players are, in terms of taking away space, our player scanning, because because you really, really want, your your player scanning, and and always keeping their head up, looking for potential threats. And I also, I also love, great speed, and players that forecheck extremely well. One of my favorite, my favorite players that I've been, my favorite players that I've enjoyed watching and scouting over the last few years has been Lucas Raymond. And I remember when I sat down to write his report, and I think I said something about his speed being his speed and his activation just make him so impressive, in terms of what he can do from a forechecking perspective. He angles himself well, his activation off the hop, he's very quick to adapt to puck movement, and and those qualities I also saw in Liam Ogren last year. I really, really like good forechecking. I understand the importance of the physicality piece, but at the same point, I'm also okay if players are less sure at the junior level, if they should be physical or not, and then grow on that and develop that later on. It doesn't, if a player doesn't have that physical gear, okay, it's something to work on. Every player has something to work on. So it's just, so for that player, it's just a matter of, finding that physical edge. But, if their skating, allows them to be a true pest on the forecheck, well, they can always get that physicality piece later. So I love guys like Lucas Raymond. His full forechecking game is just great. And then on top of that, I just love I just love compete level. I love I love guys looking to scan, and identifying vulnerable puck carriers. So I mean, there's a lot of things that I look for, but when I'm looking for a forward, with high upside, the biggest things that I look for, well, and I don't know why I said just forward, because the defensemen too, I'm looking for, I'm looking for skaters to use whatever space is given to them. Go underneath the triangle, or use the boards in transition and push the puck off them. Like, I saw that a lot in Seth Jarvis during his NHL draft year. And Seth Jarvis is awesome. So and I just loved his transitional play. Like, it was outstanding. And use whatever space you got. Yeah. That's my kind of hockey player.
Well, what about those that make space for themselves?
That too.
I feel like that's even better because there's so
Yes.
many good ways to do it, and then you don't even need to have size. Like Johnny Gaudreau's an excellent example. Like, he'll be strong side winger. He'll just start skating out like he's going to get behind a guy, and as soon as the guy starts to look the other way or stops up, like, he'll just hit the brakes, and he just afforded himself like a whole zone worth of
Oh,
space.
yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at last year's draft, and I saw a lot of that in Jonathan Lakarimaki. His stick handling in very, very tight situations. He was able to get himself out of that. And drive himself to medium and high danger. And I saw a lot of that in Jonathan Lakarimaki, and I absolutely love watching him do that. And so far I've seen Callum Ritchie do that as well too, and he's a 2023 guy. And I love it when guys have excellent hands and quality stick handling, that they can use to get around rather tightly defended situations in the offensive zone.
Lekermaki's a great example. I'm in a long-standing feud with Scouch and McGilligan, and that was my guy. I'm like, I think Lekermaki, then Ogren, and then Oslin. I mean, they're all fantastic. So
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
if I had to pick, and you're putting me on the spot, that's where I'm heading. So I like where your head's at. I mean, Liam
Yeah.
Ogren was a very interesting example of a player because he looks more physically developed than the other two. So
Mhm.
traditional thinking would say, okay, Oslin's furthest behind. He's got great skills. Why shouldn't that kid catch up physically and then be beyond those other two players?
Mhm. Yep.
And I'm curious because I've got my own biases and thoughts on this, but I'll let you go first of why, okay, an Ogren who's got great size might be the one who actually has more potential, even though he might be physically developed first.
Yeah. So with Liam Ogren, you're really, really so you really, really want that physicality to to really start presenting itself. Because as I just said, it's really that missing piece with him, because his forechecking is good. He has excellent size. He has great reach, but he's just missing that physical edge. And once he's got it, he's going to pop. So I'm very, very much looking forward to what is next in Liam Ogren's development there. And then you look at Jonathan Lakarimaki, and and I love his puck control, his hands, his shot, and he's got a solid shot off the rush too. And then with Noah, I just love his playmaking. And what's funny though is that a lot of people talk about how Liam Ogren is is very much a power forward, but he also has playmaking instincts too. And so it was a difficult debate for me, because I love the playmaking ability that Noah Oslin has, and I still think Noah Oslin's playmaking ability is stronger than Liam's. And so that's why I would have taken Noah higher. But I definitely get why people would take Liam over him. So, and I like both players. And if I was working for a team that took Liam over him, I would be happy, very, very, very happy, because I know that there's an NHL player there. I know. So I am happy, so I would be rather happy, knowing that my team, took someone, that I am very, very confident in them growing into an NHL player. So, yeah.
Yeah, and for
And
me, like he has so many little soft skills. Like he doesn't just go with the big stuff. I'm bigger than you and play
yeah,
that. Like I remember him beating a goalie. I think it was the U18s. I mean, it's U18s. So if he does it at the NHL, then it's like, okay, we got something real special. But I mean, that already shows something crazy. Where you're like, he was at like the face-off dot, and he beat a goalie on the ice.
yep,
Like
yep,
that should not happen. And the fact that he was able to fool the goalie well enough or time it out, like
yep.
there's so many elements that go into it that you're able to do that. Because no, what kid at the age of 17 or 18 is like, you know what, I want to shoot on the ice today? No, they're all going over the net and trying to shoot as high as humanly possible.
Yeah,
So I think that just shows off like little details and nuances to a game that is there, and those small skills add up. And if you look at the NHL, like there's not much space. Like you need to have those small, I think what most people call, but I always call it like the 10-foot game. Like you need to have
yep,
something where you can play in 10 feet around yourself and make slip passes, work triangle, all that.
yep,
And it's such a massive separator at
yep.
the highest level that not everyone has it. Some just cannot develop it all together. But if you can get it, man, it is so valuable in so many shapes and forms in so many different situations.
Yeah, and then and then you watch a guy like Connor Bedard, and I just saw him. Yeah, I just saw him live, and and what I enjoy so much about Connor is, as soon as he gets that little space, he takes it. He is lightning fast. Like his decision making is so fast, and that is exactly what you want in a NHL player. You do not want, you do not want players that take a little bit more time in terms of trying to process what exactly is their next move. Instead, you want a player that, you want a player that knows his next few moves. You want a player that's going to be able to adapt to whatever is coming to him. And of course there are a lot of times where players cannot get all around it. But and players are going to do that. I mean, that's that's the game. But it's the players that capitalize on those on those tight open spaces, that I just love seeing in a hockey player. And I see that quite a bit in Connor.
Yeah, it's like there's just some players that they build these mental maps. And the ones that scan and build the mental maps, like the next move is so obvious to them, like they can't imagine playing slower.
Yep.
Johnny Gaudreau, Bedard, I mean, obviously a Crosby, like all of these guys. It's just so odd. Like the game seems easy, but I'm
Yep.
assuming because it's just so obvious to them. Like, well, yeah, I looked and I already know where all other 9 guys are on the ice, where they're going, their handedness, how tired they are in a shift. Like they built up all of this information where it's like, make the move, go, or I need to move my feet, boom, or maybe I need to make an area pass. It's just a fascinating situation when you can see a player that has that, because they're just going to go to the moon. It's like watching a player at like 16 or 17. You're like, yeah, that kid's an NHLer. Like you just
Yep.
tell.
Yep.
Now there's lots of late bloomers, but there's some kids that just have that where the game's obvious to them and they're able to build mental maps. And that's something that a lot of players can go towards. Now, obviously, the NHLers and the Hall of Famers, they're freaks in some shape or form to be at that level. but there's no reason why people can't be more aware, or even just like in your life, like be more aware of your surroundings at all times. And that'll lead
Mhm.
to a rink, and now you're playing fast.
Yep.
And it has nothing to do with your feet.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I just love that kind of stuff and that kind of player. And it kind of reminds me of like a William Eklund.
Mhm.
Like the kid, it was super fast and he was quick on it. And the better his teammates are, the better he plays
That,
because they're actually moving and getting open and creating space. And he
yeah.
may not be the best at creating it for himself just based on like size and speed. But when he gets with guys that know what he's doing, I feel like those like players like him elevate the better their teammates are.
Yep. And with him, like he's got that deceptive play, about him too, where where he gives you that perfectly timed back. I'm sorry, sorry, behind the back pass, and and it's perfect, and yeah, and I love seeing that out of players. And speaking about William, I saw that a lot in another year garden prospect, but from this past draft class in Calais Odelius. While we're talking about Lakari Maki and Olgren and Noah Osland, you know Calais, I definitely saw a first round player there, and and I I was definitely shocked at how far he fell, because he has got that he's got that deceptive play about him, and the more that your puck moving defender keeps your attackers on their toes, the better his upside capability is. And so, and so I love the deceptiveness, that I saw out of Calais.
Yeah, there's a lot of good players. And anyone who reads the Hockey IQ newsletter knows I'm very biased about Seamus Casey, and I think he's one of these kids
Oh
who
yeah.
just thinks the game different. Another kid who's maybe a little bit different, even just how he trains, David Goyette. Do you know much about him?
Yeah. So I love I'm sorry, yeah. So I love I love David Goyette last year. He's very, very good off the rush. And but like my one bone to pick with David was that, more times than not he was taking that extra pass. And and when he was taking that extra pass, it was just, like the angling of the pass in the teammate of, where he was passing to, he pretty much lost that high to medium danger opportunity. And so I wanted to see David Goyette take the shot more and more. But that is something that he can definitely work on. And I love that the Seattle, I love that the Seattle Kraken took him, because especially for where they took, because I think it was the third rounder. And because like we had David Goyette much, much higher. So David Goyette, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was in that 30 to 40 range, I'm pretty sure. And so, yeah, and so getting him in the third round, great value. As well as the Kraken took Furcus at the top of the second round. And man, that kid has got quite a shot. And talk about deception. Jagger Furcus gives you that. And it's just, and so yeah, so I also love their so I also love the Seattle draft from last year.
Yeah, and I think Goyette for me is an interesting prospect because while every kid wants to, improve their weaknesses, so like, oh, someone identified a weakness, I need to get better at it, and be this great all around player. He was a kid who's like, I'm really good at speed in my skating, and I'm going to go get better at my speed and my skating. Like,
Mhm.
he's unbelievable. Like how he's going about his own development, because everyone owns their own development. At the end of the day, they are responsible for it. And players that I think the game a little bit different, do things a little bit different, have an advantage from someone who just does the same thing that everyone's telling them to do. Or, I just go, I lift weights and I get bigger. Okay, well, why? What are you trying to accomplish here? And I think that often gets overlooked is the off ice component of it. Like you think about Del Bell Blues, like he put himself to work with Gary Roberts out of St. Catherine. So like, he's doing things on his own volition. Like Gary Roberts doesn't let just anyone in. Like you have to have a certain makeup about you. And guys like that have an advantage on development because at the end of the day, it's really a learning competition. How fast can you learn and turn things into athletic feel and have the ability to scan the ice and get better? So it's like it's great when players are good, but understanding how well they learn, I think, is underrated element, and a lot of it has to do with how they match. Their maturation cycle is off the ice.
Yep, and completely agreed.
So it's these players like figuring out how well they learn, how well they play the game, and these not just like playing the game, but the mental game that goes over a full 3 periods. Like I love players that start to get better as the game goes on. You can teach a little bit of consistency. You're going to get it as you mature, anyways. But like guys that are able to dominate in those third periods, I mean, there's a conditioning component if you're physically a little bit behind or like the coach is playing you too much. Like there may be that, but just the idea of having those layers to your game, or just like playing the mental game with the opposition, and you're just slowly but surely gaining the advantage. Like that should like those things I look at personally as a talent evaluator, because I think
Hmm.
that shows something that it's really hard to understand unless you're in the rink, you're talking to the player, talking to their coach, their advisors, whatever, to really get an understanding of how well these kids are going to develop into the future and who's going to develop faster, because really that's the competitive advantage. And
Yeah,
Marty St. Louis was on this podcast and said the same thing. I wasn't the best. I was the best at getting better. And those are the guys I try to find.
yeah. It's who can generate high chances during during like high pressure minutes. Yeah, like that. Like exactly. Agreed.
Yeah. And like, for example, Mitch Marner was a classic example in his
Yes.
draft year. Like, I felt like every time it came to the third period, like, all right, how many is he going to get? One or two?
Yep.
Minimum.
Yep. Yep.
So I'm looking for those types of things. I was talking with an NHL head of, well, he's basically the director of scouting. And I'm like, look, I don't have the time to do it like you do. Like, as great as it would be, how can I kind of like shortcut it without like shortcutting it too bad? And like, my whole thing was like, all right, I just go to third periods. Like, I can watch 3 separate games, kind of get an idea of how he's feeling that night. Uh, Definitely not doing it all the way through, but also it's not my full time gig. So
Yep.
same thing happens when I'm going into a rink and I'm scouting a player for college, or I'm looking at a player for moving on to the next level, whatever that may be for my own teams or someone else's teams. Like who shows up in the third? Like who's still running and gunning, giving it all? Like you don't want to be that guy. Like I think it was Wayne Gretzky said it
Yep.
with the Islanders. Like, after we got done and we got beat for the cup, like you went and past the New York Islanders locker room and they were dead. They could not play another minute. And we felt like we could play another game. And like finding that level, that level of commitment is massive, and
Yep.
it's amazing to see in players and who has it, who may not have it. I don't know. Do you have
Yep.
any little shortcuts or just things you really key in on, something like that?
Uh, to be honest, not to be honest, not off the top of my head.
You just watch a lot of hockey. That's
Oh
what I
yeah.
understand.
Like the only thing that I can really think of is I generally don't watch power play minutes. So I so I love the power play as a fan. As a scout, it's very different, and my team constantly makes fun of me for this. But because whenever they like put in like a 5v4 or like 5v3 clip or a 4v3 clip, I'm just kind of like, well, the player had so much space in front of him. Like, I expect players to do that. So like, I expect those, players, if they have a tremendous amount of space in front of them to use that space. Otherwise, why are they in the NHL? So, so, well, actually, I take that back. Why are they playing power play minutes in the NHL? So, that's what I meant to say. And so, I really, really look for, who, I mean, who is dominating at, at 5v5 play, because because most of the time, you are playing 5v5 hockey. So it's, so so at the end of like the day, I am looking for the players that generate the most, the most high danger opportunities at 5v5 and high and medium danger. So like, because because like it doesn't really matter how many shots you get on net from low danger, because because there's a reason why it's called low danger. Like, it's easy for goaltenders and defenders, to silence that to silence that shot, and take the puck away cleanly. So yeah, so I'm always looking for guys that are, generating more and more high and medium danger, and especially guys, that can use that that have very, very good processing, and constantly keep their head moving, and looking for those opportunities, especially whether or not they can generate those opportunities, when facing heavy pressure. And those are those are the things that I'm really, really, looking to looking to find, at 5v5. And and when you're watching 5v4, 5v3, or 4v3 hockey, there's just a lot of space. So so I expect players to to do well there. And it doesn't really, it doesn't really tell me a lot if I sit there and and watch a lot of it. But then at the same point, when you're watching, these guys play 5v5 hockey, when they're creating space for, themselves, using, their stick handling and using their reach, then they're able to create those same opportunities that, that everybody looks for on the power play. So just because I'm not, just because I don't love watching the power play, doesn't mean that I'm, not, that I'm not finding players that are power play capable. Like, if players are finding space for themselves at 5v5, they're going to find space for themselves at 5v4.
Yeah, skipping power play. I always crack up when I forget like a highlight package from a player, and they're like, "Oh, I got to check out my son," and like it's all power play stuff. Like,
Yep.
yeah,
The
you're
worst.
telling me literally absolutely nothing other than you're wasting my time, because no duh, like you should be. I'm like glad you got the ice time, but at the same point, like it's a lot easier. And a
Yep.
lot of times it's not even showing manipulation on a power play. Like, oh, your defenseman who dragged it over, faked, and then walked around a guy. Like, okay, that would show a little something. It's never that. It's like a pass to a guy for one time. Okay,
Yeah.
round of applause.
As a scout, yes,
I'd rather see a penalty kill. Like, show me your penalty kill.
yeah,
I'll see your compete, and I'll see your like your cheekiness and getting sticks in good lanes and trying to disrupt and messing with the penalty, the power play.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, like, as a scout, I value the power play less and less when scouting. But if I were a coach, completely different. I understand the value of having a good, having a good power play system, and identifying those players that are going to that are going to play well in my power play system. But from a scouting perspective, that's not my job. So I'm confident if Jonathan Lakarimaki is, if he's able to create space for himself, 5v5, I am uber confident, that he's going to be able to create that space for himself at 5v4 play.
Awesome. Well, Josh, this was a wonderful time. Thanks for hopping on the podcast. 2 minutes, anything you want to plug, chat about, whatever, happy to do so. Thanks again for coming on. This was wonderful.
Yeah, man. And thank you, Greg, so much for having me on. You can follow me at Josh Tessler. My last name is spelled Tessler, and then there's an underscore after the R. And Smaht Scouting is at Smaht Scouting. And I've got a group of 10 or 11. I forget off the top of my head now. So we scout globally. And we're going to have our first set of rankings come out in November. And we're going to start pushing out reports probably in December. So over the next month, my team is hard at work, watching as much hockey as possible, and getting ready for the top 32 release in November. And once again, Greg, thank you so much for having me on. It was a blast, and I'm sure you're gonna remind me in a bit that I owe you the Seamus Casey trade because I took him from you. I'm sorry, buddy.
Too funny. No, appreciate it, my man. You take care.
Yeah, man. And thank you so much, buddy.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.